What's up, everybody? Straw hats are cool. We're back again with another video. Today we are going to be diving into OP04, exploring some of the new leaders that will be released in the upcoming set. At the time of this recording, OP04 should release about a month from now, almost exactly. So still got a little while to wait, but personally I don't have any more events that I will be attending in the OP03 format aside from locals, so I'm going to start exploring some of the OP04 decks, seeing what the set has to offer. So today we're going to be looking at green purple Doflamingo. In the poll I posted a little while ago, this was the most voted for deck, so we're going to be taking a look at Dofi today, and then on Friday I'm planning to take a look at Rebecca, which is the leader I am personally most excited for going into set 4. So without further ado, let's dive into the deck profile. I'm going to try and make things a little shorter today, not spend too much time talking about the deck, but let's start off with our leader. This is Doflamingo from set 4, 5 cost, 4 life, or 5,000 power for life, with the effect end of your turn, set up to do 2 Dawn cards as active. So very simple effect. At the end of the turn we just get 2 Dawn back. This is pretty powerful effect. Do keep in mind though that if you attach all your Dawn to characters, you cannot set those Dawn active. There needs to be rested Dawn in your Dawn area. But essentially this lets us always have Dawn open for events. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Tony Chopper. This is the film Tony Chopper. So we are running the film package. In set 4, Dofi was released alongside the Don Quixote family package, but in comparison to what the film package can do, I do think that the Doflamingo family package is currently a little lacking, but it does get a lot more support in set 5, so we'll have to see how that changes things up. But Chopper is really just here as a 2k counter that is of the film type, so can be searched with our film searchers. It does have the effect that can rest up to 1 2 cost or lower character when attacking, but really this isn't going to see much play. Maybe against Zoro you might use it, drop it early so you can attack into one of their small bodies and rest another one, try and clear the board, but really just 2k counter. Next up is Nami. Nami is one of the all-stars of the deck. One of the best searcher type cards in the game, I think. She's a 3 cost, 5,000 power character. No counter, but has an on play and when attacking effect that you can pay 1 Dawn to search for a film type card. Only look at 3 cards, so you do whiff more often than you would think. We are running a lot of events and none of those have the film type, so we can brick on those. But really good card. You can play it early and just get a lot of value out of it. Next up is 3 copies of Monkey Luffy. This is 7 cost 7k with blocker, and the on play to play up to 1 film or straw hat type character with a cost of 4 or less. So this is one of our top end cards of the deck. We've seen this card used in Film Kid and decks of that nature. Really powerful effect, getting to play 2 characters for 7, as well as getting a really tall blocker. So main cards we want to be playing off of the Luffy are going to be the Zoro and the Uta. Can also play the Nami, which is really powerful as well. So definitely a good card. Only running 3 though, because I found that when I was running 4, I just saw it too often and it doesn't have counter, so was kind of bricky. This deck, one of the advantages of this deck is that it has a lot of draw power. It's definitely a deck that can grind, so 3 copies has felt good. I always feel like I have it when I want it. So next, we just mentioned him a minute ago, and that is the Roanoa Zoro. This is a vanilla 4 cost 6,000 power character with 1k counter. And really he's just here as a bigger body we can play off of Luffy. Next up, we've got Sugar. This is a new card from OP04. This is a 2 cost 0 power character with 1k counter. So poor stat line, but has 2 really powerful effects. First one being that on our opponent's turn, once per turn, when your opponent plays a character card, if your leader is of the Don Quixote Pirates type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters, and then rest this card. Now, it's my understanding that with this effect, you do have to use it when your opponent plays the first character on their turn. It is not a you may effect. So if Sugar is active and your opponent plays a character, you do have to use the effect, but you don't have to rest the character that was played. If there's another character on the board, you can rest that instead. But I do believe you have to use the effect on the first opportunity you have. And then it's also got the on play to rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. Really good at helping us evade blockers at the end game. In set 4, we're going to be seeing more cards like Uta, which we'll get into here shortly. And yellow also gets a new Sanji that is a 4-cost 5,000 power blocker. So there's going to be a lot of more 4-cost blockers in the format, I think, and this is a great way at helping you get around those in endgame. Next up, we have 3 copies of Diamante. This is another new card from set 4. This is a 5-cost 6,000 power character with 1k counter. He has blocker and Dawn 1, end of turn. If you have 2 or more active Dawn, set this character active. So with our leader, this almost always becomes both an attacker and a blocker because our leader will set 2 Dawn active at the end of the turn. The only times he won't be set active are if, like I mentioned before, there are no rested Dawn in our Dawn area to set active. But really powerful. We've seen in the past that the 5-cost 6,000 power stat line on a blocker is really powerful, and Diamante is no exception to that. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Don Quixote Doflamingo. This is the new big green boss monster. This is a 10-cost, 10,000 power character with on play a total of up to 3 of your opponent's rested characters or leaders do not become active during your opponent's next refresh phase. So locking down 3 units is an incredibly powerful effect. Do keep in mind though that if a character has an effect that can set themselves active, for example, there's the leader Eustace Captain Kidd, and there's Odin, and in set 4 we will also be getting a new black Luffy, which can set themselves active. So your opponent can still use those effects to restand their character. However, this does prevent them from restanding during the refresh phase. So if you can drop multiples of this back to back, it can often just end the game all on its own if your opponent isn't able to establish more bodies. They're just going to fall way too far behind it. You can kind of play around it by not attacking with all of your characters, leaving some active. Played some games against my friend last night, and he was able to do pretty well by just playing around it, making sure not to attack with everything so I couldn't get full value out of it. Definitely a really powerful card, and one that you're going to have to watch out for when playing against green decks moving forward. Next up is Shiki, 3 copies. This is just a 2k counter, 2 cost 3,000 power. Has triggered a play it for Dawn -1, but realistically we're never using that. It is just a film type 2k counter, so we can search it off of Nami or the Buena Fiesta. So next up is Uta. Uta is a really powerful card from Starter Deck 5, but hasn't really seen much play up until now, mostly due to the fact that purple is a little lacking in power compared to some of the other colors. But in conjunction with the green film package, being able to play the green and purple film cards together, this card is going to be pretty powerful, especially since it kind of plays into what green already does. So she is a 4-cost 5,000 power 1k counter character with blocker and on block Dawn -1, rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So letting you rest a character, essentially giving you 2 blocks so long as your opponent has a 5-cost or lower character when you block with Uta. So really strong there. And one of the cool things you can do in green with this Uta is we have cards like Spiderweb, which can restand the Uta on our opponent's turn so that we can block with her a second time. And the on-block effect is not once per turn, so you are able to use it a second time. So can really stop almost up to 4 attacks with the Uta if you're able to do things correctly. So really strong. Next up is another card from Starter Deck 5 that hasn't seen much play up until now, but is definitely a powerful card. 5 cost, 6,000 power, no counter, which does suck a little bit, why we're only running 3 copies. But it's got the 1 attacking, Dawn -2, draw 2 cards. So it's card draw with no real downside in this deck. Once we're at 10 Dawn, we can essentially use this effect every turn, and because we get 2 Dawn at the start of our turn, unless we use an effect like Uta or the Hell's Judgment following the use of Guild Tesoro, we'll always end up back at 10 Dawn, so there's not really any downside to it. And this is what I mean. Guild Tesoro in conjunction with the Nami, you're going to draw so many cards. Like, I've often gotten up to like 12, 15 card hands when playing this deck. So when I say it's a deck that can grind, I really mean it. This deck has a lot of card draw, and that's what I really like about the deck. Games will go a little longer though, so do keep that in mind. And then last character of the deck is 4 copies of Buena Fiesta. This is a 1 cost, 0 power character. It is a 2k counter, and this 2k counter also has a really good on play. This is another film searcher. Lets us look at the top 5 for a film type card. So all searchers are good, but in the blue-green color combination, it also lets us search all of our film Straw Hats, making it that much better. Now let's get into the events. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Punk Gibson. Card we're probably familiar with at this point, a 2 cost event counter, gives plus 4,000, and then rest up to one of our opponent's cost 4 or less characters. So again, another card that can kind of stop 2 attacks, counter out of 1, rest another character, very powerful. Also has one of the best trigger effects in the game, just letting you rest up to one of your opponent's characters. So kind of forces your opponents to swing with their characters first, because you can't rest your leader with it. So definitely a really strong card. This is a new event from set 4. We just talked about it with Uta. This is Spiderweb. Very similar to Paradise Waterfall, but this one is a 2 cost and gives plus 4,000 power. But the same effect of getting to set 1 character div. So really good, like I said, in conjunctions with cards like Uta or even the 7 cost Luffy. Just restanding our blockers while blocking an attack essentially lets us block twice. And then also has a trigger, give a leader plus 2,000 power for the turn. So against a deck like Zoro, if you trigger this on the first attack your opponent makes, it can really shut down their whole turn, essentially making you a 7k leader for the rest of the turn. Next up is 2 copies of Weaklings Can't Choose the Way They Die. This is a 5 cost event with both main and counter, so you can play it on your turn and the counter step. So rest up to one of your opponent's leader or characters, then KO up to one leader, or not leader, KO up to one of your opponent's rested 6 cost or lower characters. I don't know if this card's good, but this card's kind of like Erdor to me. I think this card's really fun, so I'm playing a couple copies. It's pretty cool if your opponent attacks with like a 6 cost or lower character, and you leave up a bunch of Dawn for this. Really, you only need to leave up 3 because you'll get 2 back with your leader effect. But you can KO the character that's attacking, which just stops the attack, and then you can rest something else. And being able to rest even the leader is definitely nice. Played a game against Kaido, and they attacked with like a king or something. I KO'd the king and then rested their 9-drop Kaido, so that was pretty cool. So like I said, I don't know how competitive this card is, but it's definitely a fun one to play. Also has trigger set up to 5 of your Dawn as active. Again, that effect I don't think is good, but it's pretty funny. So I like the card. I'm running 2 copies. And last 2 cards of the deck, we are running 2 copies of Hell's Judgment. Hell's Judgment, 2-cost event counter, Dawn -1, give up to 2 of your opponent's leader or characters, -3,000 power. With the trigger, if your opponent has 6 or more Dawn cards, you may have your opponent return 1 to their Dawn deck. So essentially, if your opponent has more than 1 character on the board, this is a 6k counter, so really strong there, especially strong against cards that can restand themselves like Leader Kid, Leader Lucci, and Odin will also be good against the before mentioned new Luffy from set 4. So this is what I've been running. The list has felt pretty good. I've tweaked it a little bit, so this might not be a perfect mirror of what I play in the games. I was definitely playing for Luffy at some point, but I think I just swapped it for another Shiki. So real quick though, there are some cards that you should consider when building this deck, I think. First up is Kid. We're all familiar with Kid at this point. Definitely an obnoxious card, but I think it's worth considering this deck because with purple and the leader effect, we're always able to leave Dawn up for events, which is really good. I'm running the 3 copies of the Zoro. Some people like running the Brook because you can cheat out Nami with the Brook. And I think if you run the Brook, you should also consider running the Usopp. Just more value. If you play the Luffy, you can essentially play 3 characters, which is really good. Also got Queen, another blocker with the 5-cost 6,000 power stat line. And also, it's card neutral. You get to cycle your hand, so it places itself. So that's good. Paradise Waterfall. I'm just running Spiderweb because we get 2 Dawn back at the end of our turn, so I don't really see any point in running a weaker version of that. But maybe if you've got a 2-cost event, you can leave up 1 extra Dawn to have this as well. So definitely a good card as well. Another new event from set 4, this is Flap Thread. This is a 2-cost counter event that if your leader is the Don Quixote Pirates type, 1 leader or character gets plus 2,000 power for the turn. So it's essentially an event that gives you the Newgate effect. So against decks like Zoro, this could be really good, but it is a little awkward to play, I think, so I'm not sure how effective it is realistically, but definitely something you can consider. Might get a little better in set 5 since there is a dedicated searcher for Don Quixote Pirates. And then there's also Thunder Bagua. Thunder Bagua, I probably should be running this over Hell's Judgment because the Dawn minus can sometimes set us back. And Thunder Bagua is just really good in any dual color leader that can run it because it's a 4,000 counter, but if we're at 2 or less life, it ramps us. So very strong effect there. So that's the deck. Those are some cards I'd think about. Let me know what you think about the deck down below in the comments. What would you change? Have you been trying out Green Purple Doflamingo? How do you feel about the deck in general? If you want to see the deck in action, I should have some gameplay uploaded the same time that this video goes up. Trying out some of the suggestions. So we're going to be trying to make the deck profile a little shorter in general. We're also going to be doing it in a separate video from the gameplay. So on Mondays and Fridays now, we're going to try doing a deck profile and gameplay video, but 2 separate videos. So that way the people who just want to see the deck profile can look at the deck profile, and the people who are just here for the gameplay can do that. And it's a little less intimidating than clicking on an hour-plus long video. So let me know what you think about the way I'm doing things now. As always, thank you so much for watching. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Peace.